Big 12 social media star Clint Foster with us here. You did a video talking about the new additions to the Big 12, BYU's Big 12 orientation. And maybe we start with the Cougars. Of these 8 new schools that are here, who is the most important new piece to the Big 12 conference?
Okay, well, before I just start pontificating, Drake, how would you define important?
Man, it's a great question because from a football standpoint, Utah has 2 Pac-12 championships in the last 3 years. I mean, they seem to bring the most prowess from that scale. Then you could argue like a UCF from the mid-major ranks had been so good for the last decade that they bring an allure there. But BYU's got this footprint around the world where they send missionaries across every country and foreign land. And then you say Deion Sanders at Colorado is the TV magnet and people are glued to him. I think maybe the most important piece to me is long-term. Like, what do we know? Even if football isn't great there, this school is going to bring value to the Big 12. Who's that piece where you go, you know what? I like you. Stick around for a while.
Well, all the teams that you mentioned were the ones that I was thinking about for different reasons, right? If you're talking about immediate impact as far as competitive impact, it's Utah and UCF. A lot of people are saying Utah has a very real chance to compete for the conference title this year. I think that's absolutely true. They've got a schedule that's set up very nicely, and they've got, 33-year-old Cam Rising at quarterback, which is fantastic. And
wait a second.
Have another year.
Just turned 34. There we go.
Yeah, he's going to have another year of eligibility if he wants it next year. Utah is going to be competitive, and UCF. Obviously, they made a bowl game last year. That's better than either TCU or Baylor could say. Sure. And they're going to be good again next year. But yeah, you mentioned BYU's footprint because BYU is very unique. They like to call themselves the Notre Dame of the West. And in some ways, they really kind of are because they don't have a geographic footprint. It's just kind of Mormons everywhere. Right. So when you talk about just bringing eyeballs to TV screens, and, from a money value add, I think BYU may be the most important just from a financial piece. But yeah, and then also, Deion Sanders, for however long he is at Colorado, he's definitely driving clicks, driving news stories. At Arizona, for its part, just as a basketball piece, I had some Arizona State fans on my show recently, and they were talking about Arizona football, they're good once every 8 years. And, that's when you have to hear about them. But their basketball program, that is something that's always being talked about. And the Big 12 is a basketball conference. I think it's very 100%. Fair to say. So they're a very valuable addition as well. But butts in seats, eyes on TVs. I don't think you can beat BYU personally.
It's tough. I was there for what their Church of Latter-day Saints conference that they have annually in Salt Lake City, and being there, just the energy is palpable because there is an entire faith based around this university. It's one of the fastest growing in the world. Obviously, you're going to get that word footprint with what you get from BYU. And then there's Utah. Do you almost feel like and this is the perspective of two people who don't live in Utah and aren't fans of either of the programs, do you almost get the perspective, though, that Utah feels slighted by BYU, that now BYU being in a power conference and having the entire faith kind of based around them, that Utah feels like a little brother in the state where they are the University of Utah?
I wouldn't say that to a Utah fan, right? Yeah. Utah and BYU, from what I gather, is very much Utah doing the whole "I don't think about you at all" routine. Like, I am better than you, and I hate you, but kind of almost a TCU SMU relationship for folks from Texas who are familiar with that. Right, where it's like, yes, I hate you. I enjoy beating the crap out of you, but we're not the same, right? We're not on the same level, and leave me alone. And I do think that Utah fans are very perturbed at the fact that they had to be thrown a life raft or a life preserver by the conference that BYU is in, right?
100%.
They see themselves like, well, wait, hold on a second. We left the Mountain West first, right? We are the big boy program. We're better than you. So that may be the perception outside of Utah, but I don't think that is the perception in Salt Lake City and from Utah fans. BYU fans, I think, are like, just eating this up, right? They're like
Right.
Hartman licking the tears off of Scott Tinneman right now.
Yep.
Right, as he eats the bowl of chili. But yeah, that's my assessment of the situation.
Yeah, the two universities to me seem very even in most playing fields, but each fan base wants you to feel as though the other is not the flagship of the state of Utah, for whatever reason it may be. And some of the teams we haven't mentioned, schools we haven't mentioned, Arizona State we haven't really dug into, or a Houston or a Cincinnati. From your perspective, what can they add long term? Because it does feel like on the whole, most people aren't talking about those schools.
Yeah, it's true. And I think Houston in particular has a very high ceiling, right? If you look back at the Southwest Conference days, I mean, there were years in there in the 70s and the 80s when Houston was kicking everybody's butt. Yeah. I mean, they were handing it to Texas, and Texas fans were literally rushing the field when they beat Houston, right? Football
and basketball too. I mean, there was a heyday where it's just everything.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason is because they're in an extremely fertile recruiting landscape down there in Houston. And, if you can get the fan support and get the right coach in there, which I think that Willie Fritz is, I think he could be that guy, at least for the short term, help kind of rebuild this program. Houston can be a force to be reckoned with. It's just a matter of, are the fans going to keep coming out, and is the administration going to continue to pour money into it that it needs? Cincinnati. Cincinnati obviously has been very successful in the recent past, but the poor guys, they've had their coaches poached more than most, right? Yeah. So it's a matter of, Cincinnati's not like anytime soon, I think, going to be competing near the top of the conference, but they certainly, the proof is in the pudding. There's proof of concept there that they can be a big football school. They can be a big basketball school. I mean, heck, I think they've won a national championship in basketball, and maybe it was like in the 60s, but, in the modern era. Arizona State, definitely a big baseball school, big potential baseball school. Football, they have their work cut out for them. Again, it's another rebuild situation where if they can get the fan buy-in and they can get the right. I love their coach actually down there right now. He really, he gets me fired up. A young guy, he's about my age. And I think he's really dedicated and wants to turn Arizona State into something special. But you get the administrative support, you get the fan buy-in, and all of those pieces can start to fall into place. Again, they've competed in the past. It's just a matter of moving that into the modern era.
Come do it now, Coming up, Clint, let's talk the best rivalries in the Big 12. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. I went and saw Tyler Childers live in Virginia Beach, Virginia this weekend. You're saying, why do you go to Virginia Beach, Virginia? You don't live there. I don't. I live in Savannah, Georgia. It's a 7-hour drive. I had to fly, actually. And the flight was actually the highest cost I had to pay. I went because tickets were so cheap on Game Time. I bought them the day before. I am so excited that I now have the Game Time app that gets me last-minute tickets, lowest prices, and guaranteed. Save up to 60% off buying for last-minute sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They have flash deals, zone deals. So you can toggle this little feature that shows you all-in pricing, so no hidden fees at the end. Your seat view. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and it's lowest price guaranteed. Game Time has a ticket coverage as well for your purchase to be covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So right now, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, and that is guaranteed.